Well, happy Christmas Eve. Again, thank you for being here today. We're going to be discussing a few things today. We're going to talk about Glenn Beck's heartfelt plea and message to Trump, but not only Trump, the Republicans and conservatives alike, and also just Americans. How we should be looking forward to, hopefully, prosperity, and we should learn to work together. We're going to talk about what he stated. Again, a great word, I thought. Also, we're going to be discussing what Bill Gates just did. The man was almost brought to tears. He was literally almost brought to tears as he was talking about how the Trump administration is cutting all his funding for all the stuff that people are putting into their body. He was upset about it. So we're going to discuss that. And again, shows even people can be evil when they're quote-unquote trying to be good. It's kind of crazy. And then I want to show you a map that Tim Tebow actually brought up. It's something that he's been working on. I want you to look at this map now. That is red dots all over the United States, almost to a point where you can't see it. Don't want to be a Debbie Downer, of course, on Christmas Eve, but we should bring attention to the fact that our families are not safe. Our children are not safe. This is exploitation happening right now as we speak. Live map happening of children not being safe online. The benefit of comfortability and convenience is not bad. It's great to have internet. It's great to have streaming platforms. It's great to be able to have all the conveniences that we have. But with that comes a lot of responsibility and protection. We're going to be discussing what Tim Tebow is bringing attention to because it should wake us all up as parents and grandparents. Let's dive into all these stories today. Hey guys, welcome to our channel. Thank you so very much for being here. Merry Christmas to you from our family. I know it's Christmas Eve, and I know there will be a lot of festivities going on tonight, so we understand if you're not choosing to watch themacs today, but thank you again if you are. We humbly appreciate you. First, we're going to just talk about a few things, and then we're going to end with what Glenn Beck said, because I think it is somewhat of encouragement to say, you know what? Our road forward has to be better than our road that we were coming from. So first I want to jump into what Bill Gates was stating. He came out and stated that he is having to withdraw so much of his funding and having to make different decisions based on the alliances that he had with so many different countries on basically the USA funding these NGOs and funding these alliances to basically go across the world and give everybody these. And he was just almost brought to tears. He was doing an interview with a platform, and he was stating that he was just so upset that the government was cutting his funding. Now, we're talking about one of the guys who is, he used to be the richest man in the world. Now he's about the third or fourth, fifth, something like that. Still like 250, 400 billion, something like that. It's just crazy amounts of money. Money that you never could spend. So it's amazing if he finds his passion, then instead of getting our taxpayer dollars that we work so hard for, he should just go at it alone. Here's the thing though. I want you to do your own research. Go listen to some of the people from India and Africa and listen to how they don't actually agree with what Bill is doing in their regions and their third world countries. And yes, they're looking for hope. They're looking for someone to help them. But they're actually not too excited about Bill Gates helping them because what they're realizing is making people sick. What a lot of people are stating, allegedly, is that he is using this for testing to figure out what's best for other parts of the globe, such as America, such as the West. So is he using this in a eugenics way, kind of like what we were talking about with his father and what we were talking about with Epstein, what we were talking about with all the other things that we discussed yesterday? So I'm glad that his quote-unquote funding is getting cut. The man was almost brought to tears. I mean, if you listen to the speech, it's like he's almost whining. And for a guy that's worth $200, $300, $400 billion to sit there and whine over not getting government funding that basically we were paying for when we're struggling to buy eggs and meat, and he owns a $200 or $300 million yacht that's a fully functional town or city on water. It's kind of hard to grasp that. These are the same people though that scare me. This kind of mentality to where like this altruistic, we have so much money and we want to help the world, but when we help the world, we want y'all to actually do the work and the money, and we just go and actually do all the testing on everyone. If you look at these people like the Sam Altmans, the Bill Gates, the Larry Ellisons, no matter if they have a RD behind their name and they swing conservative or liberal, they all have one thing, and it's global power, and it's actually scary. And do I agree that his funding should be cut? Yes. But here's the thing. his funding's being cut, but we're still funding in government a lot of different things that are just unbelievable that's not helping Americans. I mean, we talked about the agreements yesterday with AI tech platforms. We talked about the agreements with a lot of players that we don't necessarily think that are good for America, but we tie alliances to. For instance, 2 more stories coming from Minnesota. How crazy is this? Minnesota mandates new requirements for teaching ethnic studies in K through 12, and it's going to be implemented in 2026. So even though we see things changing, like the cut funding of Bill Gates, we still have major funding going to Department of Education for things like this. Listen to what the school requirements are for Minnesota for the state this year. This is why you got to get your kids out of school, by the way. Trans affirmation. Dismantling cisgender privilege, meaning saying that male and female and normal marriage is a bad thing and normal couples are a bad thing. Distrusting the nuclear family, understanding they want the breakdown of the father and mother, like we've talked about. If we would establish father and mother back in homes and we establish family again, you would actually start having a better local governance and you would actually start making a better world if we brought back our families. BLM principles. Also, be more indoctrinated with the George Floyd documentaries. They want to be able to utilize them in their studies. This is real. These are the things that are still getting funding with your tax dollars. If you don't believe me, listen to this too. This is even crazier. The government has been funding and subsidizing extreme measures to make our food produce more. Listen. Once we realize that the extreme toxic pesticides that we have banned, of course, in most countries, are still allowed to spray in America because we as the government think it's healthy. Now, let's go to what's actually happening. Thousands of American farmers have Parkinson's disease, and they're blaming it on the pesticides. Paraquat is a heavily regulated weed killer that the government allows that now is subject to more than 6,000 lawsuits claiming linked to Parkinson's and degenerative neurological disorder. Okay? So we see the situations where, yes, we cut funding for Bill, but we still have a lot of funding going to things that we shouldn't, and also regulations. Did you know that a lot of these farmers cannot get subsidies from the government and cannot do their independent seeds, their independent growing without kind of cowtailing to the regulation? And some of that regulation is dealing with modified seeds, dealing with certain pesticides and herbicides that they have to use to stay with getting the subsidies and the money from governments and co-ops. One more story and then we're going to move on from this. Another way that we're wasting money. Nick Shirley just exposed the prime example of billions of dollars of fraud that's happening right now in Minnesota. Seems like all these stories in Minnesota. Isn't it weird how that's a very liberal state that's been robbing Medicare and then is tied to a lot of the Somali stuff that's going on. I want you to listen to what he said. He said, this is one of the hundreds of daycares, and he showed this. I want you to look at this video. I'm gonna just cut to it just for a second. I want you to just watch it.
Here in Minnesota, massive fraud is taking place within the government and the Somali population. Here, this building alone, Quality Learning Center, is a daycare, yet they spelled learning wrong, and they said leering. This daycare alone in 2025 has received $1.9 million from the government. And the strange things about these childcare centers is there's no one here right now. It's midday on a weekday, and if you were to try to go inside, it's completely closed and the windows are all blacked out. No one's working, midday, children should be in here, and this place is licensed for 99 children, and this is the outside. There's no windows, no nothing, and like I said, they literally spelt the word wrong on their sign. This is open and blatant fraud taking place here inside of Minnesota. The government is complicit with this, and this is just one of the hundreds of child daycare centers here inside of Minneapolis being ran by the Somali population. It's sad that it's happening here in Minnesota, and it stinks that it's happening and it's being labeled on the Somali population. However, that's just the facts of what's happening here inside of Minnesota. $1.9 million for this daycare center that can't even spell learning right.
He says it's receiving millions of dollars of government benefits. No one's there. They actually received $1.9 million in this one. He said this is just one of thousands that's operating. If you look at the sign over him, I mean, again, let's go back to that sign. He made a comment to it. He said, look, they can't even spell it right, and there's no one there, so it shows it's pure fraud. But look at that. Is that how you spell learning? Maybe they need to go to a better Department of Education instead of the one in Minnesota that's teaching indoctrinated thinking, huh? But it shows that our money is pretty much still being wasted. Yes, I love the fact that we're cutting the GAVI and the Vax Alliance that Bill Gates is tied to. But there's so much more that we should be cutting. The whole point of this little segment is to realize it's not just about Bill Gates. It's about the fact that we are wasting way too much of our tax dollars. While yours and my taxes are going up, these are the kind of things that we're still wasting our money on. 1.9 million to this daily learning center, and how many people are tied to that? How many people are making money off that? That's why when you hear politicians say about all these people coming in illegally, they love it, not because they actually care for the people. It's a money laundering scheme. Now let's move to the next story. This is actually, I thought, was a good Trump win. I had kind of put this on the back burner, and we didn't talk about this in the intro, but I want you to listen to this. Greenland will vote to become an independent American territory very, very soon. It says, Operation Greenland. The Europeans are panicking, and they're becoming increasingly worried that 56,000 Greenlanders may vote to leave Denmark and become fully independent or even a U.S. province or autonomous territory. French president is getting very upset with America and with Trump pushing to try to take this land from Denmark. Now, we've heard this really from even before the campaign that Greenland was going to become a part of American territory. And, personally, I'm just indifferent. I don't really care. If they can benefit us through rare earth minerals or strategic locations, great. But if it's going to cost us more tax dollars, it's not worth it. But to be honest with you, they're pretty self-sufficient. They really don't need our money. They're pretty okay. So it's not like we're like buying a third world country. But here's the thing. The fact that the European Union is upset with us, this also brings up something else that we need to talk about. Trump has had massive wins when it comes to proving that our quote-unquote allies in the West, meaning our allies dealing with NATO, are not actually our friends. Most of them try to work against us. This brings up another valid point that I hope Denmark does lose Greenland. Here's why. Because I think it's going to expose how bad the West, like for instance UK has done with their people, like Australia has done, like a lot of the other European countries, those people, especially when you talk about the people that are more like us, the West, the quote-unquote West, the people that are our alliance, the NATO allies, what they're doing is actually proving my point that they're not truly our friends. They're nothing like us. All they want is the worst for us and the best for them. So this brings me to a point. The biggest massive win that Trump could get when it comes to international thought patterns is this. We pull out of Ukraine. No more funding. That's not been, unless they're buying something from us. We pull away from NATO. NATO's funding is about 60 to 70% American funding, meaning our tax dollars, again, getting put over to basically risk the chance of us going to war for one of these European countries that are so war ready. The thing is this. I think if we pulled out of NATO and we secured that money elsewhere in our own defense, not that we couldn't help people if something happened, but it would not obligate us to go over there and fight wars. Let's go back to what this story was. This was about Denmark, but it's so much bigger than that. It's not just about losing Greenland. It's the fact that the French president is trying to rule over everyone tied to a European Union or a European country, that they have no rights unless they, as the leadership, give them the rights to pull out and pull away. Again, that is not what we believe in. So why do we call these people our friends and our alliance partners in NATO? Can they be trade partners? Yes. Just like China, just like Russia, just like any other country, India, South America, we can have trade all day long. But to say that we need to be lined up with them, ready to quote unquote fight their battles as part of NATO, what this story to me more than any just proves that these people are not our friends. And the last thing that we should be doing is worrying about Denmark, no doubt, and Greenland, but ultimately worrying about their own problems over there. I've told you this before. If I had a beautiful garden and my neighbor had a beautiful garden, and I said, well, look, I'm going to come help you work your garden. I'm going to make your garden even better. If I went over there, planted, did more work, tilled his soil, really added fertilizer, really did as much as I could and let mine just go, his is going to be productive and his is going to thrive while mine is not getting taken care of. And so my family's going to be like, well, why do we not have food? Well, it's because I spent all the time over there. It's kind of the same situation. Our eyes and focus for America shouldn't be on any other country, and especially when it comes to these European countries that really don't care for Trump too much. They see him as a threat. So why don't we just pull the money back from NATO? Focus on defending America. Build the American dome like we talked about. Try to make sure that we secure all the things that we need, our Navy, our military, our stockpiles. Because there's evil in the world and we need to be able to defend ourselves. If we're needed, we can go and face the bullies. But we should not be the one that everybody calls to every time someone's in need. And I think this story proves more than anything. The biggest Trump massive win right here is that Greenland truly may pull away from the European Union, but what it's doing is it actually is exposing the European Union and the biggest players of truly how much they truly despise America and Trump. I'm going to go to this map. I'm going to show it to you one more time. And again, you can't even see the states. You cannot even see those states that are actually lined up with the map. This should be just absolutely the biggest thing that we should be talking about. And all it comes down to is just like, this is called a red dot map, and this is from the Tebow Foundation. It says, the law enforcement visualization is the computers that in the U.S. that are actively accessing abuse materials dealing with our families, if you get what I'm saying. Nearly 340,000 unique IP addresses in just the last 6 months have been hit all around America trying to exploit our families. So study shows that 55 to 85% of these offenders are also hands-on abusers, and they average around 13 victims each. That is pure evil, and that's what we're fighting. And this is, again, from the Tim Tebow Foundation. The Tim Tebow Foundation has helped 4,600 children and learned how to make them safeguarded. Also has been part of arrest of 2,300 people committing these heinous crimes. Now, I want you to think about that for a second. They helped arrest 2,300 with local police. They saved 4,600 kids. But listen to the number. 340,000 unique IP addresses, meaning 340,000 individuals. So we arrested 2,300. You know, the problem, again, it goes back to what Minnesota was trying to do a while ago. When we want the school system and we tell our children that father and mother homes are bad, or the nuclear family is bad, what we're doing is we are giving our children basically a disability to say, look, you know, you allow the school to raise you, you allow the computer systems to raise you, you allow these gamings to raise you, and it makes them vulnerable. Not only that, by them hearing the garbage saying that father and mother homes and nuclear families are wrong, then they grow up thinking the same thing and they end up living that same mess as they raise generational children. That's what's wrong, and that's what the breakdown is a lot of this problem that Tim Tebow was talking about has nothing to do with just, I mean, it is evil, but it's just going back to the breakdown of the family and the breakdown of Christian living. When we start losing out on the value of serving Christ, and then we lose the value of family, then our kids are then our whole family structure is in danger. Father, mother, and children. And it breaks my heart that, yes, I'm so thankful for what Tim Tebow and them are doing. But again, look at the map. 340 individual spots that they found that for some reason we're only arresting 2,300. If my tax dollars goes to anything, it's to keeping and saving families and making sure they're safe. Now, I know Tom Holman and the Trump administration has ended up finding tons of migrant families and kids to be able to put where they needed to be put and kept safe. But there's so much work to do, people. And when we lose the next generation, if we're not teaching them, we're not training them, and we're not trying to be the father and mother that we're supposed to be, what we're going to do is we're going to see the world, the evil, and the school systems raise them. And I believe that's what's going to make for generational problems from here on out. And the last point I'll go with, and this is again, just bringing it back home to some very good quotes from Glenn Beck as he spoke the last few days. He spoke at TPUSA, then he spoke on his podcast. But I want to read a few little quotes that he had. And I thought, again, it goes back to what Tim Tebow's talking about, and again, what the government like Minnesota and them people are pushing against when it comes to getting rid of fathers. Listen to this. Glenn Beck stated, to all the fathers out there, your kids won't remember all the gifts that you gave them and what they didn't get for Christmas. They'll remember the things that made them feel safe, the sound of your voice, how you react. Father and mother in homes, and being the parents you're supposed to be is going to be the biggest gift they will ever give. Because they won't fear. They'll know the biggest gift is their family. I want a few more quotes with Glenn Beck, because it talks about, again, the value of where we're at and how we need to make 2026 even better for America. So America was never built on comfort. It was built on the people who believe they could shape their own destiny. That's that entrepreneurial spirit that I think that we're missing now. I feel like what AI and what government and convenience and comfortability has given us is basically a lazy mentality. And I think that that's why we allow children to be raised by tablets and by cell phones. I think that's why we allow our children to be on TikTok. I think that's why we allow our school systems to train our kids, because they're like, oh, we ended up fine. They'll be fine too. But we're really in a bigger war than just, well, love versus right. It's truly good versus evil. And I think the more that we say, okay, we realize there's problems, so we need to be better. We realize the fight against the family and Christianity, so we need to do better. We realize the fight against churching and conservatism, then we need to do better. And I think that's what Glenn Beck is trying to end the year stating, is that, look, if we really want to make things better, and Charlie Kirk said this too, is we have to have a great marriage and raise our families, honoring Lord, but teaching these children rights and wrongs, just common sense things that our kids are not getting right now. One more quote I want to read from Glenn Beck. It says, God doesn't create excess. People, if you exist, it means you are needed. You were born right now, not too early, not too late. You were born into this moment for a reason, and it's time for you to find it. I want to stand, and I believe we should all have the courage to stand. Now, that's probably one of my favorite quotes I've heard in a long, long time. God made us for such a time as this. There's times that me and Misty joke. I said we're like, young people, but we're like old souls and young people, because I could easily go back and live in the days where we lived completely off the land, and there was, in the what we would consider like the olden days, the days where everybody's like, oh, I would never want to live there. Truthfully, before technology, that's probably where me and Misty fit. And then there's times where I hear older people saying, "No, I wish I was young now, because man, the opportunities, the comfortability, it'd be great to be young now. Y'all have got it made." And then I've heard there's always someone saying that they wish they were growing up in a different time. But man, just listen to that quote once more. I thought it was just so good. And as we end this video, I think it just brings it home. It says, God doesn't create excess. He creates people for a time as this. If you exist, that means God had a purpose for you. You were not born too early, too late. You were born for this moment. And that moment is for you to find. Everything in the world goes on. And there's a lot of evil that you can't fix. You can't go to Washington and fix it. You can't go to the European Union and fix their problems. We can't go and fix problems all over the world. We can't even fix problems probably in our own state capital or our own city mayorship. But what we can do is we can fix our home. Christmas Eve. First of all, we need to honor Christ. It's not about Santa Claus. It's about Jesus. But here's the thing. He was born and given not only gold and frankincense, but given myrrh. Think about that for a second. He was given something that deals with death. It just shows that God had a purpose for him. And of course, it was to save the world. But man, what I've realized, I think, more and more each and every day, is that God has a purpose for each one of us. And kind of what Glenn Beck said, if we would learn to be the father and mothers that we're supposed to be, and we learn to teach our children the correct ways of living, then we're going to establish a better America. Not because we're destined to. It's because we're following what truthfully made America great. Having a basis in Christianity, in Christ, but also having a father and mother who loved you and taught you. And again, for the obvious, I love my children. I love my children more than I love your children or love someone else's children or love someone else. You know why? Because they're my children. So who's going to teach them the best? Who's going to want the very best for them? Will be their parents. We got to quit pawning our children off to the government and to the educational systems and to the internet to fix all that. Because now what we've shown you in the very first of this video is all those things are letting us down. It comes back to being the father and mother we're supposed to be. We hope that you have a Merry Christmas. We hope that you enjoy Christmas Eve. We hope that you are thankful for all the blessings that we have. Don't take them for granted. Enjoy time with your family more than the gifts. enjoy what Christmas truly means to us, and also spending time with your family. Guys, thank you for watching. God bless.